นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings, good evening to you all. Today, full moon of Wisaka, so we're remembering the birth, enlightenment and parinibbana of the Buddha. 2,566 years ago, according to which calendar you count. So a very special day or important day in the Buddhist calendar. Arguably the most important day, because it's the day that the Buddha's, all the effort the Buddha made previously came to fruition, culmination of all his efforts, and he had his own awakening experience, reached what we call Nibbana. The technical term is Asavakayayana, the knowledge of the end of the asavas. Asavas is a word that comes together with kilesa. So asava means mental pollution, effluent. Kilesa means defilement, or those negative qualities that blemish the mind. So together, the jnana, the knowledge of the end of them, means the knowledge of the pure, undefiled mind. Never to return. The Buddha said the experience of awakening is like the cutting off of a palm tree. Last week I was at Bodhipala monastery, and they have one palm tree there that's been cut off so it won't grow again. Or here in the forest here we have tree palms, tree ferns, and they, when you cut them off halfway up, they don't grow again, they just die off. So the Buddha compared that with the mind of the enlightened ones who've reached Nibbana. The mental defilements of greed, anger and delusion never arise again. And that's the highest happiness. That's why we practice. That's the purpose of the Buddhist teachings, and you might say the purpose of life. For those who like to ask those questions, what is the meaning of life? Well, the meaning or purpose of life is to practice to gain this knowledge, the knowledge of the ending of mental defilements, and experience the pure, peaceful, undefiled mind. That was the Buddha's great gift to the world. Before him, there hadn't been a Buddha. The Buddha was self-enlightened, so he didn't have a teacher who taught him the way to Nibbana. He did have teachers before he was the Buddha. Alara Kalama, Udaka Ramaputta, these were two of the leading meditation masters in India at the time. And the Buddha, or the Bodhisattva before he was a Buddha, went to study with them. And they taught him to develop jhana, rupa jhana and arupa jhana, so the most refined meditative states. They could teach him. But the Buddha's own innate wisdom bharami said this is not Nibbana yet, even though some people called it Nibbana, the states of jhana. They thought this was the end of suffering, but the Buddha said, no, this is not. So he had to leave those teachers, and he had to find his own way. And that's one of the special noble qualities of the Buddha. He's self-enlightened So he compared it to like a guy chopping his way through a jungle, sure that he'll reach some ancient city, forgotten city, like in the old days when they chopped through to different Buddhist holy sites in India that had become overgrown and forgotten. It's a bit like that. The Buddha was the forerunner, chopping through the jungle to get to this ancient city which we call the Dhamma, and comes with the realization of Nibbana. So the Buddha was self-enlightened, and that we say is the accumulation of many lifetimes of developing parami. We call the 3 layers of parami. Parami such as say dana parami, and parami of giving, sacrifice, and then dana upa parami on a higher level. So Ajahn Chah used to describe that as say like when you put forth a lot of effort, sometimes you actually physically drain yourself or even get ill or struggle in your efforts to develop the practice, and you physically you may even be, say, injured, or you sacrifice, maybe if you offer your organ for a transplant while you're still alive. All kinds of different ways you could make dana upabarami. And the Buddha had done all of that over many lifetimes. Ordinary dana barami and dana upabarami, and then dana paramata barami. Practice even sacrificing his own life for the good of others. In many, and not only once, but many lifetimes doing that. In a leadership position, saying he gave up his life to protect his students or his herd or flock or whoever he was leading. So the Buddha had perfected all these 3 layers of parami and there are 10 paramis. He perfected them all, and they came to fruition on the night of his enlightenment. And that was his gift to the world, because he'd made this determination to practice to realize the state of being a Buddha many, many lifetimes before. Say 4 asankhayas, that's 4 incalculable periods of time, so you can't count them, they're so long, and 100,000 kalpas, 100,000 eons. It's how long from when the Buddha made his first determination, adhitthana, when he was still a bodhisattva, to when he actually became a Buddha, Gautama Buddha, in our era. 4 asankhayas and 100,000 kalpas of following that intention, not giving up on it. In each lifetime he was building barami, these 10 baramis, dana barami, he's giving. As you know, one of the hardest things he had to do was sacrifice his own wife and children when he was the prince, Wisaka. And that's something every Buddha has to have gone through, giving up even his own family in a previous lifetime. And every other kind of sacrifice, dana, for the benefit of others. And Nekama Barami, so he's been a monk or a hermit or some kind of religious practitioner for many, many lifetimes. Over and over again. Training in sila and training in meditation, living simple life, maybe in a quiet hermitage somewhere, improving his skills, his knowledge. And sila barami, keeping the precepts, 5 precepts, 8 precepts, and then maybe the precepts of a monk or a nun over many lifetimes. Kanti barami, developing patience and endurance to the highest level. Like for one example, one lifetime he was a hermit and he was meditating by the banks of the river, and in that lifetime Devadatta, who became his kind of arch enemy over many, many lifetimes until his last lifetime. Devadatta was a king, and all his entourage, all his wives, he probably had a lot of them, they'd all gone down to the river for a bath, and then they met the hermit, and they were so inspired by the aura of the hermit, the aura of peace. They all sat around him, paid respects, and just at that moment the king, Devadatta in that life, he arrived, and it's like overcome by jealousy. So he sent all his guards down to grab this hermit. Who are you? And claimed he was sort of flirting with the women, which he wasn't. And made all kinds of false accusations because he was so jealous. And the Buddha just stayed calm, patient in that life. He wasn't the Buddha yet, he was a bodhisattva. He just stayed calm and patient, and he had the guards beat him, bully him, punish him. And he was surprised that the bodhisattva just stayed calm. He said, how can you do it? We've been really giving it to you and you're still so calm and equanimous. He said, I'm practicing Khanti Barami, patience, endurance, not giving in to my anger, thoughts of despair, not giving up. And the king said, wow, that's a really good quality to have. Where is it? I want some. Thinking it was just kind of a thing that you can have. And so the Buddha, or the Bodhisattva, pointed to his chest. It's here. Because all your good qualities, your barami, are in your chest, aren't they? They're in your mind, which is seated here. All these 10 baramis sort of center around your mind, which is centered around at the center of your body. So he pointed to his chest. So the king told his guards, get it, I want that patience. So they started ripping open his chest to try and get it out. Of course, it's just an invisible quality. The king didn't understand, his mind was too deluded. And the king and the Buddha, or the Bodhisattva, kept his patience. Eventually the king was swallowed up by the earth. He did such a horrible thing. All these baramis are invisible qualities. They may show up in different ways in the way people behave, but they're really inner, internal qualities. You have to know them through developing your mind. Virya barami is the same. Great effort and energy. Life after life, the Buddha putting forth energy to develop the knowledges, the skills, sila, samadhi, panya, to help people, particularly to help people. Often it was family members or students or friends. And whether he's a squirrel trying to empty out the ocean to get a baby squirrel that's in the ocean, stuck in the ocean, or the king lost in the ocean having to swim for 7 days, 7 nights back to the shore. So many different stories that the Buddha would tell to inspire others, but also he's talking of his past life recollections. Each life developing these baramis on different levels, sometimes to the highest level, just sacrificing his life to make a point, you might say, to stick with the barami, cultivate that barami. You'd even give up his life, say, to keep sila rather than fight or kill somebody, or to be patient or to practice virya. And becoming very wise life after life, panya barami. So bodhisattvas, they're always very wise. Solve problems, understand what is suffering, what is the cause of suffering, what you have to do if you're suffering, what you have to do, you have to let go of craving and attachment. Even though they're not fully enlightened Buddhas yet, the bodhisattva, life after life, has that kind of insight. So they can teach, they can help others, solve problems, get out of trouble. Satyabarami, the Buddha said, never gave up on his quest for enlightenment to become a Buddha. So that's Satya, you have that, you stick to the truth and you stick to your search for the truth. You don't give up. Don't get lost, don't stray. He said life after life and never gave up his search for enlightenment. It's not like the modern practitioner who starts off the evening, I'm going to practice and do it tonight, tonight's the night, and then the phone rings and forget all about enlightenment, go back to other stuff. It's the modern challenge, isn't it? Keeping your mind focused on your meditation when there's all these distractions. The Buddha didn't get distracted. Life after life, focused on cultivating the qualities for Nibbana. Adhitthana Barami is like resolution, determination. Making his mind very strong as he practiced so that he didn't waver in his goal. Metta Barami, constantly developing kindness and compassion for other beings, for himself, for others, even people who hurt him, like Devadatta, or other people who bullied him, hurt him. Not to give in to anger, but to maintain kindness, compassion, forgive, let go of his anger. And then the hardest of all is Upekkha Barami. It's really perfected when you develop samadhi. It's the heart of Upekkha is, Upekkha comes from sati, mindfulness. When you have good mindfulness, constant mindfulness, it brings you this equanimity and evenness of mind towards all conditions. Because as we just chanted, sabbe sankhara anicca, all conditions are impermanent, changing. Your body is changing, aging, get sick. Sometimes you get colds. You have to develop equanimity towards your body and the changes of the body, the aches and pains, the illnesses, the way you look, the way you feel, and then equanimity towards the mind. All those thoughts that we get fed up with when we're meditating, and people complain and say, "Oh, Ajahn, I think too much." You need the equanimity, so you know the thought, but you don't worry about it and you don't react to it. Thought is just a thought. Keep your mindfulness, keep your equanimity, let it go. Equanimity towards the external conditions. There's people you love in your life, people you're attached to. Anything happens to them, your mind is all over the place. There's people you hate, people who maybe harm you and cause you trouble, and you can't stop thinking about them, getting upset by them. Love and hate are the enemies of equanimity, aren't they? Push your mind up, push your mind down. Both are kinds of attachment. And often they're so close together, aren't they? The people you're attached to, they just say one thing and you're happy, or they say another thing and you're angry, down, or you're sad. Pushed around, your mind is pushed around by these conditions. Not just other people, your experiences of the world, all the external stuff we endure, what we read in the newspaper, what we hear from other people, the gossip, the weather, the economy, our job, everything is pushing us from one side to another. Ajahn Chah used to say, your mind is like the clapper of a bell. When you ring a bell, the bell makes a noise because the clapper moves and hits the side. You get ding dong, ding, dong, ding, dong, ding, dong. That's like your mind when there's no equanimity. Your mind just keeps hitting the side of the bell. Good things make you happy, painful things make you annoyed, angry. But we need to develop this equanimity to keep the mind centered. That's what the Buddha did. Perfected it to the highest level before his enlightenment. So he could sit under the Bodhi tree and he just make that determination again, adhitthana bharami. So I'm not going to get up until the job is done. I'm not going to get up until I've seen the truth, abandoned the causes of suffering, freed my mind from stress and suffering. So with great determination, he meditated. And sometimes you need that. You need that extra effort that comes from determining your mind, and then you get the equanimity, and from this great equanimity, upekkha, all these knowledges arose. So the Buddha, first knowledge he gained was the knowledge of arising away and passing away of beings, recollecting past lives. He could recollect his own past lives going back for innumerable lifetimes. Then he could focus his mind on another person and remember their past lives. Seeing with absolute equanimity or clarity that it's true. People are born and then they die, born and die. Sometimes they're human, sometimes heavenly beings, sometimes hell beings, sometimes animal. And that's a form of jnana. We say jnana means wisdom, insight, because when you have that kind of insight, doubt moves away. You have the clarity to know that the arising, passing of being, away of beings is true. When you die, if you haven't reached Nibbana yet, you have to experience rebirth. The citta doesn't die. The body dies, of course, we all know that. But the mind carries on according to karma. Normally we don't see that, so most people will doubt it, maybe not believe it, or completely deny it. But the Buddha, in his clarity, could see perfectly, this is true. Been born and died many times. And the next knowledge he had was knowledge of karma. When people do die, why, what determines where they're reborn, where the citta goes. Determined by karma, good and bad karma. So you could see karma is affecting us all the time. We accumulate good karma, bad karma. When you die, that doesn't just stop. It's like when you're driving a car, say, and you speed along the road, you turn the engine off, so you just turn the engine off, turn the key off. If you don't apply the brakes, the car will keep rolling, won't it, for a while, until it comes to a natural stop. Turning the key off is like death. When somebody dies, doesn't mean to say all that accumulated karma just stops, carries on into the next life, good and bad. Keeps giving results, and it's endless. Is one of the main things the Buddha realized. It's just endless. So he's looking for an end to samsara, the round of birth and death, which led him on to his final jnana, this asavakaya jnana, because he could see ignorance, conditioning, craving, conditioning, attachment, clinging, conditioning birth. It's a process that we're constantly caught into in this life, and then that continues into the next life. So how do you stop that? How do you stop the wheel turning? where you need to develop the qualities that he later described as the path, magga, sila, samadhi, panya, particularly mindfulness and insight, your awareness of the way things are, developing mindfulness to the point where you can see the karma-making process, the sense of self, and start letting go. Letting go of craving because it's the cause of suffering. So just like if you're riding a bicycle or something, and a mischievous person, so they come along and they stick a stick in the wheel, or the wheel stops turning. The stick would be mindfulness. When you establish mindfulness, the turning of the mind stops, at least for a moment. That's why you feel peaceful, don't you? When you're aware, you suddenly have a choice whether to think, to speak, to act. You start to experience some separation between your mind and the objects of your mind that are coming up into your experience. So if you develop a lot of mindfulness, often, frequently, it's like you keep interrupting this process, the karma-making process, the cycle of birth and death. Suddenly your mind experiences more freedom, more peace, because of the presence of mindful awareness. You take that to the conclusion. That's what the Buddha did on the night of his enlightenment. He practiced to the point where he abandoned all craving and attachment. His mind went completely still, what we call the highest happiness. No more wanting, desiring, greed, anger, delusion, all gone. And he could see that even when you practice entering deep states of jhana and samadhi, if you haven't seen craving as the root cause of your attachment and suffering, when you come out of samadhi, craving emerges again. Ajahn Chah used to say it's like a rock squashing grass. And while the rock is on the grass is dead, it goes yellow and stops growing. As soon as you pick the rock up off the grass, it starts to grow up again. So you have to keep contemplating, investigating, even if you attain deep states of samadhi, you come out and then you contemplate. You could see this is why the teachers of his day hadn't reached Nibbana. But once the Buddha was enlightened, he reached the end of his own suffering. He had the thought, eventually he had the thought to teach. And the first person he thought of were his teachers. He had gratitude to them, even though they hadn't taught him the way, all the way to Nibbana. They had helped him. So he had gratitude. He thought of those two meditation masters and said, I should go and tell them what I know, help them in their practice. But then he realized they had passed away already. So then the next group of people he thought of were his 5 friends who had, what they call the first 5 ascetics, who had been practicing with him when he was doing a lot of ascetic practices. He thought of them and he went to meet them. And they hadn't stayed with him. Partly that was their karma, because they didn't yet have true faith in him as an enlightened Buddha when he was a bodhisattva. They didn't see him as they didn't see his special qualities. They had followed him mainly because of astrology. Be warned. The astrologers said, this boy, when he was born, is going to either become a Buddha or a world-conquering emperor. They thought, if he becomes a monk, he's going to do really well. We'll follow him. He wasn't following out of true wisdom and true faith in his enlightenment. It was mainly because of a prediction. So that faith was a bit weak, lacking. But now he went to see them to teach them the Dhamma. And at first they didn't want to even see him. They thought, he's lost the way. But when they saw him coming, his aura, his peaceful aura, his composure, and then some of the things he said caught them by surprise. He's never taught like this before. He's never been this bright, this peaceful before. Let's listen to him. And so Venerable Ajahn Kalyano became the first enlightened disciple of the Buddha. It's a few months after the Buddha's enlightenment. So we're remembering that today, we say, supreme effort the Buddha made to reach enlightenment, and then this great compassion to share that with us and millions of other beings since the time of the Buddha right till today, and it's going to be around in the world for a long time to come, I think. Whatever other troubles the world has, for those who are willing and interested, these teachings are still available, and that's our good fortune. We're the lucky ones because these teachings are still here. So tonight we're dedicating a night of practice to the Buddha, out of gratitude, appreciation to the Buddha as our teacher, following in his footsteps, and also Ajahn Chah. You might say the representative of the Buddha in the modern era for us is our teacher, and who lived his life so well and taught the Dhamma so well. Tonight we'll be practicing. In a moment we'll do a circumambulation with candles and incense and flowers around the Buddha statue. And then for those with the faith, the energy can stay on. At midnight we'll have chanting, Paritta chanting, and we'll carry on meditating until morning, 4 a.m. we have morning chanting, probably finished by 5.